So it is 7:04. I'd like to call the meeting to order. Somebody second?
A second.
Thank you. I sent out the July meeting minutes a couple days after our meeting, and I think I've got comments back from all of you. So are we ready to approve those?
Yes.
Yep.
Great. Okay, so the July meeting minutes are approved, and I will send them to the town person who posts them for us. And then Evan, the May and June minutes, which was also an action item, were sent out a couple days ago. I don't know if you were able to see my comment on putting action items in the minutes. I sent you an email about it yesterday.
Yep.
Is that possible to do so we don't forget or drop off these various action items that we have?
Yeah, certainly. So I saw you called out that one for Steve Dukran. Were there multiples that you were thinking of, or was that sort of the primary one?
No, I think on both meeting minutes, there was things that had to be done. And if we just leave them in the verbiage, I don't think we're ever going to come back to them.
Yep.
So how we were doing it, in the past, we would have action items, just like on tonight's agenda. We'll go through each one of them and either, get rid of them or not.
Mhm.
So I was wondering, I don't know if you probably didn't have time to do it. Can you just redo those and put the action items, like as the first part, and then we can make sure we have followed up on them?
Yep. So yeah, I'll pull those out of the verbiage and create its own section highlighting those.
Great. And then next time, if we have things we have to follow up on, we can. So I suggest we don't approve those minutes tonight. Just if you can redo that and recirculate them, and then we can approve them.
Yep, sure will.
Great. Thank you, everybody. So I don't know, everybody probably got a chance to see the agenda. Hang on, I'm going to hide my video for a minute so I can grab it. We are going to go through those agenda items now from our last meeting. And I had them in a certain order, but Shannon is on the line right now, and she's going to help me. I'm just going to start with one of mine, which was contact the Director of Communications, Donna McIntosh, to determine coordination for sending out a survey or potential of adding questions to the town survey. So I reached out to Donna, and Donna mentioned that the person who did the previous town survey has since retired. So she's not sure what's going to happen with that. So that's not going to be an option right now, but Shannon did some further follow-up with Donna, and maybe Shannon, you can take the mic and tell us what you heard.
Yeah, sure. So I guess we were just looking for first the context of what kind of survey you were looking to put out, because I know with the town survey, if you were going to jump in on that, I think you're pretty limited to your amount of questions. Like, I think if a committee contributes to that, you maybe only get 2 or 3 questions. So I didn't know if you guys were only looking for a couple of questions, or if you were given the opportunity for a full 10 to 15 question survey, what you were looking for.
Well, so the first and the fastest we had talked when, and Linda was on with us, had suggested we might use that vehicle rather than have to spend money. I'm not sure if it costs money to send out a mailing survey. Of course, that has some money involved, or if it's an email, but we thought if we could get on that in a timely manner, that might be a first option. Do you have any idea from Donna that it will go out sooner rather than later? Because our deadline is end of December.
Yeah, I don't. And I think even if the survey was being created as it typically was, Donna had felt that wasn't going to work with your timeline, with the report to be due at the end of December. I also what gets tricky is I don't think this committee has a budget. So what we could do is, because yes, of course, if we did our own mailing, there would be costs that come along with that. But we could do like a free online survey service. There are plenty of easy and good options out there that we could use. And then from there, Donna said that she would help advertise the survey. She can do that on social media, on the town website. And I know also we could put things out in person at the townhouse and stuff like that, send it out to our boards and committee email list and such. But that would allow this group to do that without any costs.
Okay, so is the typical, was she recommending, we weren't sure if there was a recommendation for a certain amount of questions, because one of our tasks was to bring potential survey questions tonight to our meeting, which we will do. Is it like 8 to 10 or something like that?
I would say 8 to 10 is pretty good. Once you start going above 10, that sounds
Okay,
a little bit long. But
okay,
we definitely could, once the questions are formed, I could easily put that into an online survey service for you all.
and Shannon, does anybody, we talked a little bit about this last couple weeks ago. Does anybody vet the survey questions to make sure that they're not ambiguous, or is it up to us to make sure the survey is well framed?
I would say it's mostly up to you guys, but
Okay.
certainly me and Donna could go through this survey before we publish it and just also provide some feedback for you if that's helpful.
Okay,
So Beth, the only thing on that, the Concord Rec does a survey, and Anna was open to us adding to it if we wanted to add a couple questions. So that, and they do use a third party to manage it, if you will.
yeah,
And they do have a pretty good distribution, not just, you think about that, everybody that uses Concord Rec through the town. They also go to the library for folks that don't go online, et cetera. So I'm just throwing that out. That is an option with no
No,
charge.
thank you.
Anna was open to it, so.
thank you.
Yep.
I mean, Shannon, just to Carl's point, would the survey, if we go the route that we have our own WPTF survey, would that go to everybody in town, or how does that get managed?
No, it certainly wouldn't go to everyone in town. The only way we would be able to do something like that is if we did a mailing, and that involves a budget. So I would say if your goal with this is to reach as many people as possible, I would try to get on the recreations survey, because otherwise we wouldn't, I don't think, be able to do a mailing. We would just, Peg Access did a survey recently, and they just did some advertising for it on the town website, in person at the townhouse. I had emailed it out to our boards and committee list, but I wouldn't be able to electronically send it to every residence.
Interesting. And Linda, I'm just gonna, if you can unmute, I'd asked you about this last time. Would there be any, I don't know how much money that would cost, but would there be any way to get some money to reach more town, people in the town? So, because part of our charge is to reach town-wide, and Park Rec will be good, but it's Park and Rec, right? It's not every group we might, or every entity we might want to reach.
So before I answer that question, I'm just going to ask Shannon a quick question. Shannon, did you have an opportunity to explore the cost angle further?
I have not, but I know Donna has helped other boards and committees do a mailing. Like, I know she helped DEI do a mailing, and I'm thinking that she would be able to give a pretty accurate estimate as to what the cost for that is. But I've not spoken with anyone else about a budget for it yet.
Okay. All right. Thank you for that. So I guess, yeah, the charge clearly is we wanted a town-wide response to this. And it's true that we won't necessarily get that with the rec department's mailing. So I guess one thing I would suggest is that perhaps the chair, if you're comfortable, or I could assist with this, speak to our town manager and see what might be possible.
Okay.
Shannon, are you comfortable with that?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Because I don't want to in any way, I appreciate, I appreciate the good information you've brought us.
Yeah, no problem.
Okay.
Okay.
May I ask when the rec department survey goes out?
I don't know the answer, Jennifer. I can ask Anna, but they just sent one out. I stayed around for one of their meetings on a totally different subject, and they get 600 responses from the town, and they just did it recently. I don't know when it's coming out again, but she said at least once a year, if not twice a year. But I can find out.
Yeah, Carl, it'd be interesting
Obviously-
also. Oh, sorry, Jen, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, if it's not going out this fall, then it probably wouldn't be useful to us just because our December deadline.
Right. And also, for example, I don't know anybody else, if you're beach members, I did not get the survey myself. So I'm wondering what the audience is as well.
I didn't get it either.
Yeah, she said that's definitely anybody that's had anything to do with rec. I mean, I think I put that in my notes. We can look that up, but
Yeah.
but yeah, it's a pretty broad audience. I stayed for a totally separate topic, on what they're doing with rec in general, the investments they're talking about. And as I said, they get about 600 responses, and it was like 15,000 or something that went out. But that's
Wow.
a typical response. It's like 3% or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, that we talked about that last week, Carl, that, the survey response rate and click-throughs are, not that great, but
Right.
it's just one avenue.
But they took it seriously, and that was a big part of their direction. And again, this was like where they're going to invest for rec things, nothing to do with us. But
Yeah. Well, it's interesting if it went to, 15,000 residents and 600 came back, and a couple of us here statistically weren't one of the ones who were queried. I'm not even sure.
yeah,
So I guess, Linda, can you just ask if we are able, I would bet that the town has some kind of large email list to even send electronically, right? Or mailing USPS would be obviously more expensive, even though we'd probably get the town rate.
Yeah.
But could you just check if we could do either? And we'll tonight in our meeting, continue to get our questions together, and then we can figure out if it goes that way or through the rec department.
Without a budget, I'm sure it's unlikely we can do a townwide mailing.
Okay.
But that's the part that I want to explore to see what the options might be. And I'll do that with Carrie. And then the other thing I'm remembering, and I do remember that maybe it was Kurt who mentioned this too, that at Ag Day, I think originally Rec said they were willing to have you sit with them while they did their survey on site. So,
Yeah. So Egg Day is one of our things we'll talk about
yeah, I just wanted to,
shortly. Yeah. Whether we get a booth or not is even unknown. And then to turn it around and have something written, it's going to be pretty time sensitive, but we will discuss that.
yeah, okay, good. I just wanted to throw it out there.
No, thank you. Thank you. Okay, so thank you, Linda. If you can just kind of check with us, our group will still march forward with what our last agenda item is, to actually, throw out some of our potential survey questions, and we can go from there. Thank you, Shannon, for following up with Donna. I know she was on vacation, so I appreciate your help on that.
Yeah, no problem. Just let me know how I can help if you want to send me a follow-up tomorrow.
Yeah, I think what we'll do is after we go through what our potential questions are, if they're in any kind of shape, we'll send them to you to vet.
Okay,
How
sounds
about
good.
that? Okay. All right. Thank you.
All right,
So-
thank you.
So the next one is the next action item in order, contact Recreation Committee member Phil Griffin in the Recreation Department, Anna McEwen, regarding any future plans for White Pond. So I forwarded the first information Carl had collected from Anna, and maybe Carl, you want to highlight that, and then your new information when you went to the committee meeting on the beach last week. I'll give it to you, Carl.
on the rainy day at the beach, I might add. So there was July 18th and July 25th. 18th was just myself and Anna. Beth, you sent those, that review on it. I don't know if you want to go through that, or people have questions about it.
I think you could read them quickly, or we can, does anybody have some comments or questions? I know I have one, but I'll let you guys have the floor for a minute. Or Carl, do you know high level, anything that you found interesting, helpful, or surprising?
I'm just looking at them right now, or maybe I can share these.
Sure, I mean,
email I'm
everybody
sending.
read them, I'm assuming. It was
Oh, is
good
it?
information.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
Go ahead, if you can share,
well-
I can probably give it to you.
How do we do this? How do we do this? We share screen. Do you see them?
No, I
Yes.
don't. Does anybody else?
I do.
I do, yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. So you guys can glance on and if you have any questions, but basically, we already talked about the town survey. Anna was not aware of a town survey. Again, not to repeat, but she offered us to use her consultant and her survey basically to tag on to it if we would like. I know we talked about kayaks and paddle boards. She is looking at a third-party vendor. I guess it's a $20,000 budget item. The analogy she said, it's like in Boston where you check out those bicycles and you use a card and you could check out a kayak or a paddle board and you would then return it and so forth. But she's looking at that and she says she has somebody that's potentially coming up with the $20,000 to do that. But that's she views that as a Concord rec decision, but I just want you guys to be aware that that's something that may happen. Right out, we already talked about that every Thursday they're having some kind of concert. She offered for us to provide a table at that if we like. The opera singer concert, I haven't heard. I don't know if it's supposed to be on the 18th, on the August 18th, I believe it is.
I thought you had said the 25th. Does it have it in the minutes?
I actually have it on my phone. Let me look at that. But it was it's not the 18th.
I think
the
they were
17th. It's the 17th, August 17th.
Last I heard, and Evan, I asked Jim, your dad, if it was the same one that we have for Dock Opera. And I don't know if they were negotiating with the same group of singers, but I don't think it had been finalized yet.
Yeah, I think that's right. So there is definitely at least overlap in the singers, and it is a separate event. So my understanding was it was going to be like some opera singing and a DJ at the beach starting at like 8 p.m. or something like that. So I'm just hearing this all secondhand.
Yep. Okay.
So,
But
yeah,
Anna did say it was
different
the
event from
17th.
the dock opera is non-sanctioned, just on the dock.
Right.
Nothing to do with this.
So Carl, was she suggesting, or was one of the ideas, were you thinking maybe that would be another opportunity for us to put a survey out there?
Yep. She said we can put a table out there if we wanted, or however we wanted to do that, meet with a crowd that's listening to the opera. I don't know if that's a great venue, but but she offered that. She was very open to us being involved in any of these things.
Okay, great. Thank you.
And just on membership, the 500 folks are signed up for White Pond. Their maximum capacity is 600. She told me that they hit 600 before COVID, and that it has creeped up since COVID, and she would anticipate hitting that capacity again. The biggest issue she has is closing down the facility due to the algae. So the other thing is that they would limit people in the water based on how many lifeguards they have, I guess. So they can fill up the parking lot, but there's only so many they're going to allow in the water based on how many lifeguards there are. So that is like a capacity limiting factor. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
Okay.
I think you said,
yep.
Yeah, in your email, didn't you also mention that, we talked about signage, which is one of our topics and one of our recommendations, that she was not opposed to having some kind of sign telling people who are illegally swimming in stations to go to the beach, they can go there.
Yep, she's totally okay with that, exactly. Or we do, mention the $5 for the swim, for that day, and she was totally open to that.
I have a comment about that. I was looking at the White Pond Recreation site online with the Concord site. And as far as I can tell, you can't swim unless if you're under 18, unless you have an adult with you. So telling, like a 16-year-old on the other side of the pond that they could just go and pay their $5, that's not really true, unless they can get their parent to go with them. Is that right?
I know, my kids swam there. I mean, they had to pass tests to get past the buoys. There's a certain section for the kids that need parent supervision. If they pass a certain test, right? No, there's some truth to that. They need to pass a certain test to.
If you show up just for a day pass, you have to have a.
I don't know. I mean, I would certainly think if some 5-year-old shows up there, the options is let them swim. I mean, that's an extreme example. But
shows up or a 17-year-old shows up, they cannot swim according to the website unless they have someone that was over 19, actually 19 or above with them.
That seems excessive, John.
Well, it does. I mean, I didn't make up the rule. So actually, I met with Anna McCoy on another issue, namely Warner Pond, this last a week ago. And I asked her about that regulation. And she said that all the regulations that they have are just brought over from when it was a pond association private beach. And the town didn't want to change anything because that might rock the boat too much. So that's where all the rules come from. And I was wondering if that might be an issue for a questionnaire for us, like, are you satisfied? I don't know. I just think that, like putting up a sign on the other side of the pond and say, you can go over and pay $5 and swim in the town beach. If that's not true for teenagers, that's kind of a screwy thing to put a sign up for.
It's very interesting because I know friends of mine drop their kids off and they're nowhere near 18 or 17. They don't go with their parents. They're members, right? But their parents don't have to be with them. So maybe one of us can email Anna and just kind of get.
Yeah, I can do that.
Yeah, thanks, Carl. And if it's one of the rules that they just took from the former beach association and they're not worried about changing them, maybe that can be one of our recommendations, not a high priority, but a recommendation to look at the rules of who can get in.
Yeah,
we definitely, if we can get signage there, we should definitely have Concord Rec approve it, though. You know what I mean? So that it's not misleading. We don't want people showing up there and saying, I got $5, can I swim? And they get turned away for some reason.
Absolutely.
it's really hard on the guards who have to check everyone, if people are coming with real expectations of swimming and they're not allowed.
And particularly in the previous comment on capacity constraints, where they're going to be limiting number of people in the water. So we sending everybody there and then saying, all right, well, now you have to stand on this beach.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's just from a practicality standpoint, I think that's hard to do, to limit the number in the water. Historically, it had always been the parking was the sort of the natural limiter as to how many people were down there. The parking lot would get full and then you turn people away. And that was sort of, some people would go park at Willard and then walk down, and that'd be fine. But that was sort of the natural governor on the number of people. It was never on the sand or in the water.
Yeah, and I mean, they're not doing that now. They used to like gate card people at the top, right? And that has changed now as well.
Yeah, that's just an open parking lot now, right?
Yeah, and so Carl, could you ask a couple questions, follow-up questions?
Sure.
The one about the age, and if that's something they would be interested in changing, because I'm sure I would also compare it to BD. Does BD say you have to be 18 or over or with an adult? The rules would be similar, you would think. And then number 2, it was not in your recap, but did Anna mention how many of the people, she mentioned members, right? 500. did she give any indication of how many are visitors, not members? Do they count that? Do they look at that? How many are just other people, other towns and guests?
She does know that. I mean, there are people from Acton and stuff. You mean who's a member, Beth, or who?
Yeah,
would-
yeah, versus you, like, because we're talking about letting people at Sachems know they can just go. Do we have any kind of idea of how many people are just going who are just looking for day passes, not members?
Yeah. You mean right now? In other words,
Yeah,
how many-
today.
yeah,
I mean,
okay,
these,
okay,
yeah, could you ask that too?
sure.
Right,
It would-
and I'm a member, but it would be very easy to go there and not check in and just swim and not pay your $5. I mean.
Well,
nobody's-
I that's what I do. I just go on the end of the road because I'm cheap. So that's another story.
Well, it's
You're on,
totally
you're being
worth it.
recorded,
It's
Carl.
totally worth
Yeah, I
your
know. Yeah,
investment, Carl.
well.
But I mean, I go and say, I'm a member, my name is Jennifer Parker. And sometimes like, whatever, they're not even checking me in. But I thought that they would want to keep track. So they'd have the data of, oh, maybe we need more lifeguards, or how heavily utilized is it? But it seems like any kid who wanted to go there and not sign in could easily do that. And not pay.
It may as the capacity kind of starts coming up post COVID, they'll be stricter. Maybe they're just kind of lax right now because it hasn't been that
Yeah,
as busy.
or maybe the
past couple
lifeguards don't
years.
really care that much. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's a little bit of a strange dynamic, just, over I haven't experienced it too much this year with the ranger on duty, but the last couple of years, there'd be 2, 3, 4 times as many people at Sachem's Cove as in the beach. So we're gonna tell
Yeah.
all those people, now what is this? Why do I have a beach membership if it's 150 people that aren't members and 25 that are? Like, what kind of dynamic are we setting up here?
Well, I mean, this is a tough one because, how do you want to control how many people are using the water and its effect on the environment? And do you want to even put any signage up at all? And I know Alyssa, right, she talked to the ranger and there's been a couple of people that just ignore the ranger or something, but I don't know. I mean, like Evan, my perception is there's not many people swimming in Sachems Cove, not like there used to be.
Last Saturday, it was super hot. I went to the beach and I swam around the pond, and there were only maybe 8 people at Sachem's Cove on a super hot day. So
yeah, and we went as well. And there was probably one morning, 30 people in the water, open alcohol and floats all over the place, and dogs. So I think it depends on the time. And also people where you're swimming, Jennifer, I don't know, like, because we are on the pond ourselves. If you go around the corner, there's certain spots that are less, observable. So it just, but you see the beach not crowded at all. And there was, like Evan said, it happens. But I think, and there's tons of garbage. We've talked to, we pick up garbage ourselves, many residents do. And so it's obviously being used. So if we could divert them, especially when you think about no garbage, no place no restroom facilities, it would be such a better situation if we could let them know they could go to the beach.
We could do signage and not bring up the $5, just
Tell them to go.
reinforce,
Yeah.
just
Yeah, to your
reinforce,
point. Yeah. Okay.
right.
And then Carl, sorry, go ahead.
It would make sense that permanent signage shouldn't have a price, because next
Oh, yeah.
year. Or,
No.
Just that the public is invited to use the beach. It's not residents only, it's not.
right,
know,
it's not just
you
Concord
remember-
residents.
Yeah. Agree.
Yeah, maybe something more generic, yeah, like that, yeah.
I mean, the regular sign we would have is no swimming, no dogs, take your trash, and then something residents, all are encouraged to use the beach, blah, 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 something like that.
Yeah, or you give them a website or something,
Yeah.
you can take a look and memberships and day passes are available or something. Okay.
Carl, could you, before we ask more questions about the talk with Anna, can you kind of give us the a high level with your commission meeting you went to?
Yeah, so I just want to say, oh, okay, but the last point, Beth, before that is Anna really felt we needed to emphasize what the White Pond Task Force is doing on the website. She feels there should be one, this is her opinion now, but is one location for us to click, if you will. This is about White Pond. This is our mission. These are our members. And here's our activities. And then more in references to other websites, like, for example, testing or description of the APOD or, you know, whatever details we want. But she felt that clear communication of our mission, you know, to help the ecology of the pond and stuff. And she felt that was important because right now she felt, you know, this is her, I'm taking this as like her raw perception, you know, that is, we're not very visible. White Pond ecology, White Pond efforts, you know, again, like the APOD or testing, whatever, is not very visible. So, you know, I just think that's worth noting because she lives on the website. So, as far as the meeting on the 25th with the commission, I mean, I got to tell you, I mean, Anna is running the show here. This is the commission is just there to kind of say, you know, I like pickleball and I like, you know, I'd like to have kayaks or something. But I mean, first of all, they're not, White Pond is a small part of their world. You know, you think about it, they've got, you know, Hunt Gym, and they've got, you know, all kinds of activities in the BD Center, and it's 12 months a year, and White Pond is 2 months a year. And it's a small part of their pie, if you will. They actually asked me to talk about our mission, and I kind of reviewed with them our charter, you know, our written charter, like that's what you call it. And they had a lot of questions. They were very interested in, you know, how the testing's going on, what's going on with the APOD. Somehow the topic came up on the rainbow trout. You know, nobody knew that fish were stocked there. So they were just asking me more questions, you know, and but again, I think Anna's the key here. I don't think the commission's just providing some input, like if they hear something in the community that, you know, the pool's too expensive or they're not happy with something. Anna's really driving the ship here, kind of thing. And there's a lot of talk about new hirings. Her assistant is resigning. He's going to another town, and there's talk about that.
Oh,
And I did stick around for some of the other topics they're talking about. And again, that's when I found out about their surveys. They're looking at multiple sites to expand, you know, fields and stuff, and they're actually looking at the StarMet. I don't know if you know the StarMet old Superfund site on 62, taking that and turning it into a bunch of fields, which I don't know how you feel about nuclear isotopes, but anyway, so, you know, it was, you know, it's interesting to see around, but, you know, they did use a survey. They do take it seriously. As I said, they sent it to a lot of people. I guess it was more like a 4% return, but it's a pretty low percent return. You know, I'm trying to think, I mean, but that, you know, without getting into a lot of specifics about what's important to them, but it was, they just want a pond that's clean, that they don't have to cancel anything. You know, that's the only thing they want to hear from us is, how are you keeping this place clean and open?
okay,
You know? So I mean, that with the commission, I think Anna's the key,
okay,
and she's very collaborative and very cooperative, and I think she's open to all the things we already discussed. So the commissions, they're just there to kind of help, you know, if there's any negative feedback they hear in the community, kind of thing, or any suggestions. Like, again, like pickleball came up 20 times. So
Carl, the name of the baseball team in The Simpsons is the Isotopes.
oh, is that I didn't know that. I'm so I like The Simpsons,
It's
but I
good
don't
enough
watch.
for Springfield. It's good enough for us.
There
Um,
you go. There you go. So yeah, so I would think going forward, Anna's the one. I would think, you know, like we talked about what our final report's going to be. I would say somebody from the team should meet with the rec, because that's a big part of our existence, right? If you will, the White Pond's existence. You know, maybe go to the meeting twice a year or something as a follow up. You know, that relationship's key. So That was about it.
I think that was part of our charge, right? That's when months ago we said some of us will go to certain meetings. And so what you're telling us is that that's really important to stay involved with the rec.
I think so. Yep.
Okay. Evan, do you recall who was the volunteer for that board?
Do not off the top of my head. I can probably track that down.
Yeah, let's do that and ask them to start attending more regularly.
I don't want to get off too much into the weeds with the kayaks and the board rentals. But that would take up part of the beach, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, Jennifer, yeah, I mean, I guess it'd be like a rack that you would kind of, put it somewhere there, but.
I
Yeah.
can, I don't know if you guys are familiar with Ice House Landing in Maynard. It's a walking trail. It's a beautiful trail along.
Oh, yeah,
the
no, yeah, I've kayaked
river.
there. Yes, I know exactly
So
what you're talking about. Yep.
they just put a kayak rental kiosk there. And
Oh,
you pay, you can use your credit card and you can go. And I think that Garreau Pond has something similar, or some kayaks that you can rent. In my opinion, and we can talk a little bit more about this because of what we read about the Rangers input, I would be throwing out there, I don't think it's a good idea. We can discuss farther because the Ranger has no control of people once they're on boats. And again, if they're, just going in on the boats and hanging out at the cove and throwing garbage around or doing whatever, you kind of lose that control. And the Ranger doesn't have enforcement type of control even right now. So adding more into the system when we have this other pond, Garreau Pond, might be something we might recommend it just be there and not at White Pond. I'm just throwing that out there. We can discuss further, but I would give you an example of one, and it is really nice at Ice House Pond, just recently put out there. You can go and rent a kayak there.
I think that's the kind of thing we could bring up then. I think if we had a sound objection, like the effect on our environment and the pond's health, she would probably be fine. She's not going to fund it. She's not asking for funding. There's a third party it's like $20,000. I really forget who the third party was. It's not like this is a high on her agenda.
Yeah.
So if we had a legitimate objection on the, environmental health of the pond, I'm sure she would,
Okay.
not do
So
it.
that can be one of our things we think of potential recommendations, right? Great.
Yep.
Any other questions for Carl before we move to the next action item?
no, thank you, Carl.
No, sure. It's my pleasure.
Thanks so much, Carl. I think the next one is we did the survey thing. How about John Coleman? I sent the information. John had talked at Egg Day. I'll just quickly highlight that they said they could not really commit to us having a booth until near the end of August because they have their other farming groups that they want to, nonprofits go first. So John and I had conversed and mentioned, is it worth our effort to put surveys together and a potential booth, knowing it's September 9th and we won't know until the end of the month. So John, do you want to further iterate on that?
Yeah, so if we're going to apply for a table, we need to get our application in by the 12th. They won't tell us until, I think it's the 30th or something of August. And the reason is that it's mostly for farmers, and farmers don't know how much produce or whether they'll have produce to sell or not until, very shortly before the 9th when it starts. So they want to keep open to have, however many farmers actually come in there. And then the NGOs can get the leftover space. And then, we're not really an NGO, we're another town committee. So I was wondering if we could get some kind of, ahead of all the other people, just, as a kind of a courtesy from one committee to another, working for the town. But I don't know how we would really, what kind of muscle we have that way, if we wanted to really do it. I thought that one thing in the application, we have to know how much space we need. And it's like, how big is your table or how big is your tent? And I didn't really know what the answer was for that. I think a tent was volunteered, but I don't know how big it is. So that's something I need to know before I send in the application. If I'm asked to, if
Yeah.
I should do that.
Alyssa said she had a tent, but I had no idea how big.
Right,
They're typically 10 by 10, those pop-up tents.
10 by 10.
Yeah, it's the typical size. John, what's an NGO?
Well,
Non-governmental organization.
maybe that's the wrong thing. It's not for profit or something. I don't know. People who have an ag interest, who have a table, and I guess some of them ask for contributions for their organization or something like that, and that's allowed. But anyway, we're not kind of in that class, I thought, and maybe then all we are is we're not farmers, so we kind of have to fill out the same form that these other people do. But then I was wondering if we could get at the head of the list of the people who aren't farmers or not. And I also thought that, if we're going to have a table somewhere, sometime, we could work up our arrangement for Ag Day. And then if we get booted out of there, we could still use our prep for another table somewhere else.
I think, it would be all of us. It's right around the corner. It's summer. Do we want to pursue this knowing it might not come to fruition when we have these other options that maybe be the survey and maybe at the Park and Rec? Do we want to go forward with this or just drop it? I think I'm asking the task force here. With a yes or no.
Beth, I feel like we need a firm mission and message we want to communicate. I mean, I have my opinion. I'm happy to get into that right now, but I mean, I don't know if we're ready. I'll decide what, like, we're going to put a table out. And what is our message? What's our 2 or 3 clean messages? We're going to, I don't know. I mean, again, I don't want to give my opinion what they are, but
no, I know.
and I'm
that's
happy
what
to
I'm
if
asking.
you guys want to talk about that, but I don't know if we're ready to do that. What are you going to say?
I think that's a good point, Carl. That's the question. Are we ready or not for this? And that's what it sounds like for you. You think no? I will second that.
I know what Carl wants to say, but Carl's not the whole group. So,
Jennifer, Evan, John, what do you think? It would be us doing it.
My opinion is, given that we don't know if we will be able to get a table, it doesn't make sense to spend our time preparing for something we may not even be able to participate in.
Okay, Evan?
I mean, I think if we're using it as a means for distributing surveys or trying to do things like that, I think, and not a huge lift, maybe, but I think that type of venue is more typical of, hey, here's who we are, here's a bunch of information about us, and it's sort of broadcasting information to generate awareness about your group. And I don't know if that's exactly where we are right now in our processes.
Well, I think originally, Alyssa was sort of saying that one of our charges is to solicit information from the town, or get opinions from the townspeople. And we're like, well, how do we do that? We could do a survey. That's some question. And then we thought, well, we could have a table at a location where a lot of people are coming by.
Yeah.
And we thought that we'd have something to ask them, for their opinions. Now, it's like, if we aren't ready to make those questions now, well, when will we ever be? And shouldn't we be ready to, pretty darn quick, if we're ever going to get information out of the people?
Yeah, so I think, that you're just, what do you have a minute or two of someone's time as they're passing by? Is that kind of the vision? So it's probably like 3 questions. And then are we just kind of tabulating responses?
I guess.
I missed at least the last meeting, so I missed some of the background, some of the context on this.
Honestly, one of our action items tonight was to start talking about potential survey questions. which some of these could be one of those 3 questions or whatever, but in my experience, and you probably are all longer Concord residents than I've been to 2 egg days in my lifetime. And I can tell you, when we go through, we're looking for, what attracts you is maybe a raffle, a donation, something. I don't know if it would attract me about White Pond if I'd stop at my booth, and then we'd still have to get we'd have to be spending some money to put something together. What is it? Are we going to talk to people? Is it just a meet and greet? Or would we have our survey questions ready because we don't even have them out there yet? So I feel that I wouldn't want to be out there unprepared either.
No.
And
Well, do we even have a budget to get a table?
no. We've no budget.
So that's your answer.
We could, how much does the table cost? I mean, I've got a table we could use. We've got a tent we can use. I don't think money is the issue.
No, but I mean, do we need to pay to participate?
No,
Oh, good, okay. So there's no charge, it's just a matter of space.
exactly.
Yeah, but if we'd also have to be thinking, are we going to put brochures together, print things? I just think it's around the corner and we're not prepared. If you all think it is, then I'll support it. I just don't know what it would be yet. Again, it's August 1st. We won't know for sure until the end of the month. Should we just concentrate on the other questions we want to ask in our other action items, or do we go and just say, yeah, let's have John apply for it? And I'm a person who doesn't like to wing it. That's all I'm saying. And I can tell you personally, I won't have the bandwidth to manage this myself.
I don't like to wing it either.
Does anybody want to take the charge to manage this and get it going? If that would be a volunteer who wanted to do it, I would help. But if not, I'm going to say nay for me. Up to everybody here.
I'm a nay, but and I do think we have a firm mission, but again, we don't need to get it now. But I would say no.
I could see it being if we have our survey questions, almost if we have our survey done and are we sending that out through the rec department or however we're trying to get that out to the town, then could this be one way of distributing the survey? Almost just, I don't know what kind of response you get there with people going to want to stop, fill out a survey, and then kind of get nothing in return for it and keep going. I don't know if folks are going to want to talk about that. I don't know. It sounds like maybe did Alyssa have some different vision for it? Do we know?
I can't speak for her.
I think she felt that as part of our charter was to get input from the town, which is part of, it's in that written document. So we're kind of exploring different ways to do that.
Yes, I'm probably in similar camp as the rest of you. Happy to support it, but I don't totally have a clear what that vision would look like. So certainly not prepared to lead it.
John, do you have any?
I was hoping to be out of town on the 9th of September. It's one issue.
Okay. All right. Okay.
But, it's like no one wants to do it, and yet is it something that we kind of have to do? Because how are we going to get information from the town about various questions that we might pose? It's
Well,
like,
I mean, if you look at like a survey again, like the rec department with 4% return, you're never going to get some concrete feedback. I think, to be honest with you, I think it's pretty obvious. People want a clean pond that works, and I think, Beth, I sent you that thing from the National Park System where they say they want to preserve, I forget the exact thing, but it says, preserve nature for the benefit and enjoyment of the population, which there's always been a conflict, because obviously if you have 50 million people in Yellowstone, it's not doing great things for the environment, but that's the conflict you manage. And people want a clean, beautiful white pond. That's what people want. I don't think there's any mystery what people want, I guess is my point. So, there's a lot of action around that, again, not to repeat, but APODs and testing and, control, mitigating stuff going to the pond and stuff. There's a ton of stuff around that, but maybe I'm the simple sales guy, but I don't mind. I don't think it's hard to figure out what the town wants, man. I don't know.
Yeah, I reread the charge before our meeting tonight, and one of our roles is to figure out ways, how do we recommend to protect the pond, right? Manage and protect the pond. And what are we going to advise for the future as far as a white pond advisory committee? Are we going to advise that? And so we're not going to reach 100% of the town. As you mentioned, Carl, people on the rec department weren't even aware of some of the things like the APOD, and that's, to me, that would be some of the survey questions, like, are you aware that there's a tech in the pond right now where we are one of the few ponds in the state that aren't having huge blooms? I don't even know if people know this fact, right?
Yeah.
And one of the recommendations, if we're going to say to keep the APOD in the water as a preventive measure for future, which will include some budgetary dollars, and it's not a lot, by the way, but it is money. That would be part of the education and getting town people's commitment. If they don't know it's a problem, or if they do know, and if they know that there's something happening right now that's helping to prevent it, that would be a question I'd want to ask people. Are you aware of these things? And I don't know if people are
yeah,
aware.
and Anna was making that point on the website that that's positive, the APOD's positive, the testing's positive, the runoff thing,
Yeah.
with the new, runoff, with the driveway.
Yeah.
I guess there's been other improvements in septics and stuff. And so we have a very positive story to tell. But I think, again, at the end of the day, town wants a clean pond. I don't think there's a mystery here.
You get it to the people, you could have pictures of the APOD at the table. And
yep, we could do. I agree. That would be that's our key message. We've got a clean pond. We're working towards keeping it clean and safe for you and your families. And the other thing is, like, advertise. I got to tell you, there's nothing like a mother and her kids saying they love going to White Pond. There's your advertising. So if it's clean and they're going, word of mouth is.
Do you guys all subscribe to the Friends of White Pond newsletter?
I
No.
get it. And I saw the most recent one where a resident was saying he was happy to have that right in front of his house, which it's not the most attractive thing.
Right.
But he was willing to have it moored to his own dock because it made the pond swimmable.
Yep. And that's the kind, and that was also, we had the article in the Concord Bridge 2 weeks ago. You probably saw it. We
I thought
sent
that was
that
a good synopsis.
It
was
and
from I forget the guy's name of the APOD guy.
John Higgins, who I'm working with constantly. And so at that thing, I put together a poster board with pictures of the APOD, and we brought that. The town couldn't fit it, the bridge couldn't fit it in their article, but it is on the Friends of White Pond site. There's a picture of it showing that. We certainly can have a picture of it and things like that. I'm happy to have that done. I'm just not going to be the one that can do it for September 9th. And John Coleman, it sounds like you're not here. So if we really feel strongly about that, we need a volunteer to stand up and say, I sit there and man the booth, and we can contribute, some of us in the background, by providing some material. There's no swag or anything we can give people, which attracts people all the time. That's, whatever it is. I'm happy to contribute my own money, some candy or something, but usually people go because there's something there that makes them go that way.
Mm-hmm.
Was Alyssa interested in doing the table?
I have no idea. All right,
Do we know, are there other events?
Right,
follow-
are there
There
other
are in the
festivals?
summer, there's other Thursday night events, but that's only in the summer.
So you
it's
got right
really-
out.
Yeah, right.
You got the drop
I-
off, swap off day. You got a mass of people congregating there. I mean, there's certain days
What
where
day?
Concord Center is the drop off, swap off. You get people congregating at Kai's
Yeah.
Road.
like October or something, I think.
That's mid-October. Usually it might be like the 14th or something like that.
Yeah.
There's some days I never know when it is, but Concord Center's just closed off. Is that, I don't know if that is Ag Day or if it's other days, but the streets are closed for a few hours and there's always some kind of little festival going on or sidewalk sales and stuff. I never know about it in advance, but bump into these things. So I don't know if we get involved with one of those. That might be a couple weeks later.
We could interrupt the Patriots Day reenactment. That would definitely get us on the front page. No,
Too
that would be
late.
good. Too late. I think if we focus our energies on updating the website and what our message should be, and then from that will fall out other communication, for other stuff. But I don't know. September 9th, yeah. It's kind of quick.
Okay, so we can't belabor this anymore. It's 8 p.m. I think I'm hearing clearly that's a no from at least two of us. John, it's a no from you because you can't be there. We can email Alyssa and ask her if she's interested in maintaining a booth and talk about things, but I don't know what data we give her. And that would mean another meeting before that time. So I think we should probably just move on to the next topic and talk about survey questions. So at least we have an idea about what those would even be. And we can just take a vote once more in a few minutes because I want to get this meeting going. Does that sound okay?
Yep.
Thank you. All right. Before the survey questions, Evan, there was another action item that was yours from a few months ago that I think you are going to reach out to the DPOA residents. I don't know, in your own mini survey or your own mini discussions to figure out if the DPOA had any feelings about the pond, et cetera, et cetera. That's one of the actions.
It's a meeting that is I got a note back from them. So that's getting scheduled. He said he had some stuff typed up that he wanted to share in advance. The board members have switched. So that was one of the lags here as I reached out to the old board, and since then the board members have switched over. So there's some new board members that I'll be meeting with in the next handful of days, and we'll report back on that.
And is your thought process that you'll kind of just ask them about feedback about protection of the pond, or what would it be?
So I think kind of what's high on their list right now of questions, concerns, and then get some feedback as to how they would like to, do they have any thoughts on how that could be communicated to the select board? What would be a good vehicle for doing that?
Okay. So there will be an open action item for next meeting. You'll report back.
Yep. And it should be the next couple of days that I chat with them.
And if you want to just even send an email so people, in our task force are aware, we can do it that way, and that would be great too.
Yep.
Okay, thank you. Real quick, I forwarded you the information about Alyssa's discussion with the ranger. Have you all had a chance to read that email?
Yep.
Yeah, I read it.
Yeah, I thought that personally to me was very interesting, that she mentioned two people specifically in that time period that Alyssa was there, that the ranger said, get out of the water. And they looked at her, acknowledged her comment, and didn't do anything. And that comes back to an issue that we really do need to discuss, is enforcement. Because no matter what happens, if you can't enforce something, and it is, the state's involved here, is there anything you can really do? And then secondly, the ranger, as we talked about, is covering many properties. is not there on the high weekend days, only a Saturday or Sunday. Generally, it's Tuesday through Saturday, and she's here very limited times. And, you know, is it that people are aware that when she's here, so they circumvent that timing when she's there? And thirdly, I did hear she was given permission to ticket cars that park illegally and that there's like 3 fishing spots over there. So she has some enforcement from ticketing, but that's the, you know, that's the only enforcement she has. So one of the things we really probably need to talk about is the ranger, the importance of a ranger. Do we need a dedicated ranger on certain days, high volume days? And what do we think about that? Because I think that should be something we're talking about recommending, what is needed in the Cove. Comments?
Well, as far as crowd control, right? I mean, we can't use fencing. I'm not even saying we should. So I guess where I'm going with this is, the only choice we have is a ranger. If a ranger is not there all the time or all the peak times, it would make sense that they, we would advocate for a ranger to be there at all the peak times, I would think. But as far as enforcement goes, I don't know. I don't know if we want to become an armed camp or something, but I mean, I don't know. I mean, if somebody refuses to, listen to the ranger, abide by the ranger's recommendations, I don't know. I mean, we want to start calling police and stuff. I don't know if we want to go there.
I think the thing in the email said that the town doesn't own the ponds, it doesn't have jurisdiction over people who are in the water. So you could call the police all you want, but they couldn't do anything either.
Yeah. I mean, you're not going to get 100% of people not to go. So maybe, just a ranger that's there is probably going to deal with most folks. I mean, Evan, you talked about when you were a kid, the town of Waltham moved there, right? So if we can avoid that or just keep it to a dull roar, but I mean, you and Beth live on a pond. I mean, how's it going right now? Beth, you're saying there's quite a few people still, or?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The reports I have and we walk, John walks probably 4 times a day down there with the dog and has yet to see the ranger. And this is not making judgment. I'm just saying the times he's there. And when he talks to other people, they haven't seen him. And I've talked to Jane Prentice, for example, who talks to the ranger. She's a steward now. And, has mentioned, obviously she has 5 or 6 properties or whatever, so she can't be there all the time. But it's interesting. The presence of the ranger does something. Enforcement might be something we want to consider in the future. I don't know if we can, but clearly there's people swimming. And clearly there's a lot of garbage. And clearly, animals in the water. So how much all that impacts the pond and the nutrients, I mean, I don't know. But I think it's important to have one because it does detour some bad behaviors. And when the beach closes, and I think the lifeguard situation is a problem here in Beatty, getting lifeguards even because, kids are going back to school and it's been a problem all over the state. What will happen then? It will be interesting to see people just, move to the beach then instead of the Cove. I don't know. It's been a hot summer.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like when a few years ago when the ranger was there, and I haven't observed as much this year, but I feel like you certainly don't get everybody, but I feel like it does lessen the numbers. In the last couple of years, it was 100 people, 120 people on a Saturday, no problem, all the time. So it sounds like we're not seeing those populations. So, if we're knocking it down 75%, kind of take that as a win.
Yeah, partly, remember, Evan, it was COVID though, so nothing was open, right?
Right.
So people were doing whatever they could.
Yep.
And would go wherever they could to swim. But I absolutely feel like the presence of a ranger does something, and it would be nice to know they might be there more often.
Yeah, I think, if we get more official looking signage and a person in a uniform and keep an eye on the parking, that's going to handle a lot of it.
That's the
Um,
parking on the other, near the cove, right? Like, you mean over by the office building
Yeah.
there, or do you mean?
So what she mentions here, that's off of Dover Street, at the end of Dover Street.
Oh, okay.
There's a little downhill to the left, and at the bottom of that are a couple spots.
I get you.
And
Yeah, there's a well.
generally where people are walking in.
Yeah.
Once you get out of the Dover Street neighborhood, there's a couple side streets that are not permit parking, so folks will park there, walk through the Dover Street neighborhood, and then they'll see those spots, and there's either a couple cars or not. So a lot of times people come flying into the neighborhood 40 miles an hour, check the spots, see they're full, come flying back out of the neighborhood 40 miles an hour, park, and then walk and pull their coolers and stuff down the street.
Yeah, and she's
Another
ticketed a
playbook.
few people who, there's the other little road. Sometimes it's got a chain across it and to the water, there's a well. And so if people park there where they're not supposed to, she can give tickets for that area. And then in the report, she mentions that she's seen an increase in foot traffic, and that's, Carl, just for what maybe you're talking about, a lot of people park up by Frost Farm in that area as well and come down from that method. And now, of course, the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail, if you have not been on it, the rails have been removed. And personally, I see, because this is where I back up to the rail trail, the unfinished part, we see lots of people coming, people with towels on their back is a pretty good sign on a bike or on foot that they're not going for a hike.
Mhm.
So
I-
that's
I
the
would
other
be in
thing.
favor, I would be in favor of that being a recommendation, that there be a ranger there every weekend. Knowing that, who knows if there'll be budget for it, but we can make that recommendation.
So that would
Yeah,
right.
sign it, some signage or.
Signage would really help.
Yeah,
Yeah, certainly, having a ranger there on a Tuesday versus a Sunday is a big difference.
yeah, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So I think we have two recommendations we're talking about right now. Better signage, and then a ranger presence, at least, for the weekends and maybe long weekends, 100% of the time. And Linda had given us the couple of the different committees that had done tasks. They had done charges or task force charges. And there's an introduction section, blah, blah, blah. And then there's a table at the end on one of them that was pretty nice, where it talked about the recommendation and then the priority, high, medium, or low, and then who's responsible. And so you take something like this and say, okay, recommendation is a ranger at the Cove, from whatever it is we're going to say, May through September, or whatever we are going to agree on. And a priority, high, medium, or low, and then who's responsible. And then it would be, the town in this case, or the people of the town, because it's a budget issue. And so that's kind of how the recommendations, we can start putting pen to paper. We can always remove them or add to them, but that would be a couple we just talked about that could go on that list.
Yep.
And I just like to, Evan, help me. Thank you, Evan, for putting the high, medium, low. Like I'm good at Excel, but not that good. So thank you. And then Carl said he will continue to take our thoughts and put them on there. So it's one less thing as the chair we have to do. So thank you, Carl.
Yep.
Yeah, if any sort of formatting adjustments, I spend a lot of time in Excel, so I can handle any kind of changes to the template itself. Happy to do that.
Perfect. Yeah, thanks. Because we did talk about this last time, Evan, you weren't there. The rest of us were. I felt it was important to start penning recommendations right now, even while we're collecting information, because we're going to run out of time if we don't.
I
And-
agree.
Okay,
Good
yeah,
to Start tracking those.
great. Okay. All right. So let's move on. One of our action items, and then we can end, I hope, is all of us were supposed to put together a couple of potential survey questions. And I'll start with John. Were you able to put on paper a couple of survey questions, and we'll just go around table?
Yeah, I think we should ask if people are happy with the way the public beach is being run at present.
And John, how can you just iterate for me or elaborate? Sorry. If I look at the charge of our one of our roles is, ways to protect the pond. Will that answer some of those, that part of the charge? If we're happy about how the beach is being run?
I'm sorry, I don't quite understand what you're asking.
Our charge is to recommend ways to protect the pond. And so if we ask people about how the beach is being run, is that going to answer any of those, the charge questions of protecting the pond? That's what I'm asking.
I don't know. I mean, I thought that you were asking for survey questions to find out information from the town about, so it does it have to, do they all have to relate to water quality issues?
I think that they all need to relate to our charge, which is what our charge is to, how are we going to manage and protect White Pond?
I don't think that's true.
I think that's what the charge says. What do you see different?
I think that's one charge that we have, but another one is to find out, how the town is, making use, or what they think of the use of the resource, right? I don't know. Should I go back and look at the charges?
Yep, I don't think there was anything about the use. I could be wrong.
I think that'd be a Concord rec question, right? Are they happy with how the public beach is being managed? They meaning the town folks.
Yeah. I'm not saying we're not going to do it. I'm just saying I want to tie it back to what we're supposed to be doing. That's all.
I think for sure, and okay, so I don't have the charge on this computer. My computer is like in the shop, so I can't read through what they all are. But I'm sure that we were supposed to ask for input from the town people about what their point of view is for White Pond, and I think that most of the people I talk to, they say they're unhappy with the way the beach was run, and that's why they quit being in the in the White Pond Association for for the beach, and so I think that that's certainly or like they don't like paying the $5. They don't like the guarded situation there. They just want to be able to use the pond more freely. I think those are kinds of things that we should find out about, if that's a general feeling in the pond of the people of the town or not.
So let me just tell you real quick, the purpose of the task force is to recommend a prioritized list of activities to undertake to protect the pond and the watershed. To recommend the future role of the White Pond Advisory Committee. To determine roles and responsibilities of interested parties relative to these priorities. So you're right, we are supposed to solicit input from residents both within and beyond the White Pond watershed via the use of surveys, hearings, forums, etc. Solicit input from boards and committee, which we're doing actively. Focus on areas outlined in the White Pond vision, and develop this prioritized list. So the purpose of the task force is a priorities list of activities to undertake to protect the pond and the watershed. I don't know if I can share this. I think I can. Can you guys see that?
Yes, thank you.
Yep.
And we
I
all,
think, John, we could ask, I mean, if you're hearing that, we could give that feedback to Concord Rec and ask them, you know, or we could even draft sample survey questions for Concord Rec survey, because that's, you basically, it sounds like the feedback you're getting is they're not happy with the way it's being administered, you know? So we could do
They
that.
certainly weren't happy in the past, and you know, I don't know if the current arrangement is, you know, I guess it's not much of a change, but it'd be interesting. I thought to see, you know, I mean, that's kind of what the town's resource is that beach, and it would seem like as our task force, we should find out if, you know, if the town people like the way the beach is being run. I don't know.
No, I mean, I definitely, I would think Concord Rec would be interested. I think we should do that jointly with Concord Rec, I guess is what I'm saying. If that's feedback we're getting, they should know that, and we should help them draft a survey for their survey, because that's their administration, if you will, you know, their lifeguards, their process. you
Their
know, the-
facilities, you know, the bathrooms.
Right, et cetera,
The
yeah.
hours that it's open and so on.
So we could do that. We could do that in concert with Concord Rec.
I think it could start to feed into a little bit of what kind of use will it be getting, right? Some of those questions could dovetail into that, and then sort of usage and capacity, and those things are things that are directly relevant to protection. So it's kind of 2 steps away, but I think it does head towards that.
yeah, because capacity, as I understand it, Carl, isn't about environmentally protecting the pond. It's about safety and
Right.
having enough lifeguards there. Where
Yeah,
our
they're
role,
gonna cap out the members at
Yeah.
600. They're already at 500, and then right, it's capacity of
Yep.
of safety around the beach. Yep.
where our role is more about the protection of the watershed and
Yep.
the environment. And so, you know, if the restrooms are operating and the garbage is being collected and all that stuff isn't being dumped into the pond, that's like important for us.
Yep.
I think-
Yeah, and your point too. I mean, you know, on the kayaks, if we think, I mean, I was thinking about that. You know, maybe they could limit the kayak rentals to only members, and that might be less of an impact on the environment. You know, if we're worried about that. But anyway, that's a story for another day.
Well, what was that about impact to the environment?
Well, I think
There
I think-
isn't an impact to the environment. It's just a safety thing. I mean, is it?
well, my impression, you know, Beth, you were I don't want to speak for you, but you know that if you had a bunch of folks down there kayaking with a bunch of coolers or whatever, that could affect the environment. I guess, right? That was the fear with having the kayak rentals, or
I think my fear is that, not my fear, one of the things is that we already know that the ranger can't do anything about people on boats. And if people are able to rent kayaks and hang out in areas like the Cove and not have restrooms and not have garbage facilities, what will happen? Is that a potentially is that a potential situation that we want to avoid? Because that doesn't mean you're a member. To your point, Carl, you have to be a member to rent in a kiosk. Since as Jennifer mentioned, there's not a lot of control right now because they're not controlling from the parking lot. So if people are just coming and renting kayaks, you have a situation, even if we have a ranger there all the time, she will or he will not be able to necessarily enforce or manage. That's all.
yep.
But yeah, I think that's a good question for Park and Rec to be asking. And you said they have a professional survey helper.
Yep. Yeah, we
That would-
can bring that up with Anna.
Yeah, that would be a good one for them. What would they want to see different, right? Has anybody ever been turned away? How does that impact them, right? People were very dissatisfied 2 years ago because they couldn't swim because the pond was full of cyanobacteria. I only heard positive things this year, and we're looking from now in the future because there hasn't been any beach closures. So people are happy. People were more upset with, Emerson being closed because of lack of lifeguards. It's not upset with the White Pond Beach right now. So keeping it safe from harmful algal blooms is obviously a priority. Any other survey questions? Probably should each have a couple.
Yeah, this is Evan. So I was thinking about, what are some negative behaviors or challenges that you've observed at the pond over the last several years? And then maybe follow up, have you tried to raise these issues to the town? In what manner did you raise the observations, and were you successful in doing so?
Can you repeat that for the minutes, please? What are negative behaviors and challenges that have been observed?
Yeah, you want me just to, negative behaviors, challenges you've observed at the pond over the last several years? And then follow-ups to that, have you tried to raise these issues to the town? In what manner did you raise these issues? And were you successful in raising those issues?
Well, Beth, to be honest with you, based on our, again, I don't know, maybe I'm weird, but based on our goals, our charter, I don't think, I don't have any survey questions, because to be honest with you, I think we need to outline our mission, our roles, responsibilities, recommended activities, keep this pond clean. And all the things we've been talking about, we need to summarize that into action items. I don't think, based on our charter, is to get this pond clean. I don't think, we need surveys to determine what the town wants, but that's just me, man. All right, Beth, you still there? You left us.
Sorry, I was muted. I just
Ah.
asked you an entire question. I'm so sorry.
Oh, it's okay. It's
Carl, are you saying that you think it's more important for us to, I'm not sure if I understand, but you're saying that these surveys, everything else, we should just be making recommendations even without them, or can you rephrase?
well, yeah. So I think our mission's clear, again, to keep the pond as clean as possible for public use, whether it be people living on the pond or the town's beach. We have some firm things that we're recommending, not to keep repeating, but the cleaning it, testing it, runoff, etc. We need to reinforce that and recommend other things, you know, that we've talked about in the past, mitigation, other mitigation efforts with septic, or, you know, whatever, you know, the story. And that's it. I don't, I mean, to your point, why are people happy? Because they're not dealing with cyanobacteria, right? That's, you know, I mean, if there are specific things in other areas like the Concord Rec that we feel that, you know, having kayaks would be a problem, for example, I'm just using that as an example, then we should do that in our conversations with Concord Rec, which is good. That's good. That's one of our tasks. You know, we should meet with Concord Rec twice a year or something like that. But I don't, there's no mystery what the town, I don't think there's any mystery here, man. They want a clean pond. They want to keep this beautiful pond beautiful, you know, and help manage the public use of it so it doesn't ruin it.
Okay,
That's, I mean, and again, looking at, you know, your document there, you know, that's pretty clear, you know, prioritize
Yeah.
list of activities to protect the pond and the watershed. And
Okay.
roles and responsibilities. So to me, it's not, I'm not trying to be cute here. I just don't think we need a survey. I think we should report out to the town what we're doing. A lot of things sounds like they don't know about, you know, the APOD and, you know, all the stuff we talked about. I definitely think we should report out more, communicate more. And again, I think the website's probably the best thing, but we could do other things like tabletops and stuff. But I you know, I don't think there's any mystery what the town wants.
So I think it's right. So that's the ultimate goal. So then I think what we can solicit, and you know, I'm not. The survey may be a good mechanism for it. It may be a terrible mechanism for it. But it's okay. We want to protect the pond, keep it clean. Okay. How do we do that? Right. So there's you know, some may say, well, you gotta go rip out all the septic tanks, put in new septic tanks, or rip them all out, put in the sewer line. You gotta not plant on the fields, you gotta regrade all the pavement going down to the pond, you gotta stop stocking it with fish, right? So people may have different opinions on what it means to protect the pond and how to protect the pond. So to the extent we can solicit those thoughts, those opinions, you know, those of us on this task force, you know, we're not necessarily tasked with having all those answers. We are tasked with going out and soliciting that input. And you know, the best way to do that may be what we've been doing, having these meetings with folks. But if we can come up with a survey to send out without, you know, that's not that may or may not be a ton of work. If we can do that and get some other input from folks that we wouldn't have reached out through our other means, then that's terrific. And it also then is a little bit of a CYA as well down the road, where someone says, well, wait a second, what do you guys, you know, if there are changes and recommendations, and someone says, well, wait, I never heard about this. Like, well, no, you had your opportunity and this was your opportunity. You chose not to respond to the survey. Right. So there's a little bit of that as well. So I think it is a worthwhile task. You know exactly what those questions are. You know, that may not be that easy, and exactly how we distribute that may not be the easiest question either. But I think there is some value in chasing it down.
Jennifer, John, any other input?
Well, I think as Shannon offered, having a free online survey that is sent out to town boards and committees would be the way to go if we want to do a survey, because there's no cost involved. And it seems that people who are on town committees are more civically engaged than others. And it would be a way to say, however imperfect, we did reach out. We did, instead of just having the 5 or 6 of us make up our own minds about it, we did reach out and get some feedback.
I agree. I mean, I think we've done a lot of reach out. and I for sure know you can continue to reach out. Totally agree. And to Carl's point, and it's interesting too, because I think it was Alyssa who thought we better talk to the committees, not just the town people, the town employees, which of course is important. And what Carl found out during his discussion is it was more important to talk to the town manager for that piece, right? So, but we are reaching out, we continue to reach out. And I totally agree, we need a survey. We can do one. It's just one other tool in our toolbox. So let's just, I don't want to keep the meeting too long. Should we, instead of just each of us talking about our potential questions, we should send out a survey. If we can do it, Shannon and Donna can kind of vet it, and or Park and Rec we can add to theirs. Should we each just email 2 or 3 potential survey questions? And I will volunteer to take those all, and then I can send them to Shannon and Donna to kind of vet. You want to do that? What do you guys think? Because it's 8:34.
I think that's a good idea.
Yeah, sounds good.
Yeah, I like that if you're willing to do that, Beth.
For the survey, so it can only go to, it can't just be sent to every, I don't know, town list of people, as well as the committees? How does that work?
Well,
So I'm not sure if there is a town list or not.
yeah, Shannon said she didn't have, just a general residence list that she could use. She said she could send it out to her email list on boards and committees, unless I misunderstood.
Yeah, it sounds like we can do that and then put it on social media that this exists, post it in public locations that this exists. It sounded like that was going to be what she could do.
But Linda also, who's still here, sorry, Linda, I know you're still here. Linda also said she was going to talk to Carrie, the town manager, and see if there's any other, avenue for the survey. So regardless of who it goes to, Linda will check if we can expand that list in some way. And if at a minimum, Shannon and Donna will send it to at least who they can send it to. That's what I'm hearing.
Yeah, and we could
Yeah.
also, through a letter to the editor, to the Concord Bridge, have a link saying, fill this out if you're interested.
No, totally. That's a great idea, because I sent the Friends of White Pond article to them and they posted it, as you saw. And we have a Friends of White Pond newsletter, and we also have the Facebook page. So we could actually put it there too. Sometimes you reach a lot more people that way than the town, because how many people actually even open up and look at the town website? Carl, to your point, there is the web does have the charge for our task force, and in the Board of Health, there's a whole bunch of information about the APOD and reporting blooms. I think maybe Anna might be suggesting that we have it all combined into one area, and maybe that's next time that we have the White Pond Task Force or Advisory Committee have it all there. So when people Google White Pond, it's all there. But yeah, I think there's a lot of opportunity, social media wise, survey or, questions.
Right, and it's never going to be perfect. There's always going to be someone who says, well, I wasn't consulted, I had no idea. But
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
try, we will put it out there the best way we can and let the chips fall where they may.
Okay, then let's do this. I won't be the vetter. If you can all send me, let's just say 3 questions you'd like to see on a survey, and send them to me. I will tally them all, and I will actually send them to Shannon, and we'll say, and we'll post it versus our charge, right? To make sure it fits in with what our purpose is, because that's, I think, really important. And then go from there. Does that sound like a good plan?
Yes, thank you.
Yes.
Sounds good.
Okay, so it's Tuesday. If you guys could all send me those things by Thursday, after our discussions tonight, I'm out of town next week working, so I would at least be able to get them to Shannon and Donna before I leave.
Okay.
Thank you so much. Okay, any other, Carl, I think we have a couple of recommendations that we have talked about. And a couple of action items, Jennifer, that are still active from our minutes. Any other business before we hang up?
So the only other thing we've talked about the farm fields. And I guess the question is, we did follow up with a lot of folks since the last meeting, but should we be talking, and I'm happy to talk to Steve Verrill about those fields and whether we want to ask them. I don't know what we want to ask him, maybe, whether they're that necessary for his operations. Would he consider not fertilizing that field? Do we want to do that?
I personally think that's a good idea. I can tell you it has been done before. Steve Verrill was guest at a number of our meetings. And there's some confusion from some people that thought he was not using fertilizer, and he stated he is using IPM, integrated pest management. So I think that's a good idea, Carl. Yeah, maybe talk to him again, because in the advisory committee that had been done, but I think for our task force, that's a very, very valid point.
And
Do you
I guess
mind?
No, I don't mind talking to him at all. I as I said, my best man's good friends with him. And John, do we know that all the water flows from the north? So I guess the question is, if he asked, is the field that borders on what's the name of the other road?
Field Powder Mill,
Not Powder Mill. What's the other road? The
Plainfield.
Plainfield. Is the field that borders on Plainfield, does it matter? I guess my point is it's.
Yeah, I think all of those fields, the groundwater flows from there towards the pond. I
Okay.
would ask that, I guess not only like how much fertilizer does he use and what elements does he, so there's NPK, what does he fertilize with? And also, I wonder if he limes those fields, because that would shift the pH and make the phosphorus that is in there move more readily if he limes them. So I'm just curious if he use lime, or could he be persuaded not to use lime?
Okay. Yeah, I'm happy to do that. So you think both fields could impact the pond, though? It's not, because I don't know anything about this stuff, but the hydrology was such that the water was coming from the north, but you're saying that the field it would be to the east.
I think the east is still, I mean, I don't know exactly what the contributing area is, but it looks like it from the east as well. I have that one map, which I don't have with me right now, where I, did draw the contributing area. You could match that up with his fields, but I don't. Maybe I'll look at that and I'll email you. How's that?
Yeah. No, I'm just curious. I will ask him. It doesn't. We can talk about it at the next meeting. That's okay. I'm just curious. So, yeah, but I'll take that action. It's about the Steve Rao.
I think that's really good. And thank you, John and Carl. Whatever fields are abutting the pond, we know the two right there. I mean, obviously it's an aquifer, but what is he doing? What is he using? And is it something that needs to be done? I know a couple of years ago, they mentioned just making it go into meadow, the one right by the beach entrance. And I know they planted it last year and people were really upset, but yeah. So if you just ask those questions, because fertilizer we know is totally input into nutrient feed.
Oh, yeah. Well, right, we need to quit, but it's weird.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts before we end the meeting?
No.
Okay, so 8:43, meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
All right.